in the very first inning, if you guys remember, the first hitter, I give up a home run.
Mm-hmm.
What happens in the bottom of the first? Ryno hits a 2-run homer and gives me a lead, and we held that lead until it got rained out in the bottom of the fourth inning. I just, I told him one time, I said, Ryno, buddy, and this wasn't long ago, I said, I don't win the Cy Young without you. And being humble, he goes, I don't win the MVP without you. And I'm like, I think that, 1984 not only changed Ryno's life and my life, but I think there's a lot of people that can relate to that and just how Wrigley changed from what Lee Ilias said about it in 1983 to what we all saw and got to experience in 1984.
Rick, like under better circumstances, for sure, you were so close with Ryno. Our condolences to you and the entire Sandberg family.
Marco, I appreciate that a lot. You and Tommy have you become close friends over my years in Chicago, and there's no question that we're all going to miss Ryno in many, many ways. From him out there in the field with the other Hall of Famers to him and Margaret were in the stands as much as they could be over the last several years. They had season tickets, but I got to be honest, man. I personally, I'm hurting, and it's not getting any better. It's a hurt that my brothers are alive, my sisters are alive. I feel like I lost a brother. Ryno, we met back in '84, and you're right. The Sandberg game was when my wife and I became Cub fans. It was my wife's first game ever at Wrigley, and when I came out, she goes, "Are all the games here like this?" I said, "No, I think what you saw today is something that people will always remember." But Ryno and I, we met in '84. We grew up to be brothers. Tom, you and Marco know this, but we were neighbors out there in Indian Ridge. We lived across the street. Our kids, Justin and Lindsay and Shelby, they grew up together. For 7 years, you can all relate to it. We rode to the park. We rode to the park every day, and we rode home. And truly, the rides home were just incredible. We had a rule. After every game, depending on what we had that evening with the family, we signed autographs after every game, win or lose. It didn't matter. We were going to do that. We had to take some side roads home because there were a lot of times that people would try to follow us, and it was all good. It was just fans. It wasn't like they were trying to hurt us or anything. But, along the side roads, we could always kind of get away when we needed to. And the one thing I think of, and there's just so many thoughts going through my mind that it's hard to keep it straight. But occasionally, on those side roads, we'd see a baseball game going on. We'd see little leaguers practicing or having a game or whatever, and we'd get out. And it didn't take them long to figure out who we were, and if it was a game, Ryno would throw for both teams. He was legendary for his changeup. He thought it was a pitch that he could have got him a Cy Young award. He said his changeup was always better than mine. He's probably right, but the last thing I'll close with on our rides home was there was a time when. And the Pete Crow Armstrong story brought it back to me, in that we went by a lemonade stand, and Ryno said, "Pull over," and I did, and he went back there and he bought some lemonade, and I could see the kids looking at him and a couple of moms that were there, and I said, "Get your butt back there and tell them who you are. Let them know that they're right. They know it's you." And he's like, "What?" And I go, "Come on, I'll go with you." And just a great moment. I think there were 8 kids there and a couple of moms, and just, Ryno was a shy person. He was quiet, but there was just a lot of love in him for the kids. Not only his kids, but all of the Cub fans. They just meant the world to Ryno.
Sud, I was it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I was going to say, from a distance, one could come to the conclusion that, as good of friends as you were, you had different personalities. Like, it was opposites attract. But over the course of time, did you find maybe you were more alike than you were different?
You know what? That's a great statement, and it's totally true. But it didn't happen while we were playing. We were completely different then. There was, I was the outspoken guy. I was supposed to do this and do that and whatever. But what I think about is, everybody knows that Ryno retired in '94, and we know the reason he did that was because he was going through a divorce, and we all know about that. Shelby's going through one now, and it's horrible. A lot of people have had to deal with that, but Ryno retired because he wanted to take care of Justin and Lindsay. And in 1995, he didn't play. But in 95, he got married to Margaret. And, I mean, you talk about an angel sent from heaven. I mean, that has been that lady from that point on. And in 1996, she looked at him over the winter, and she goes, "You're still working out." She goes, "Why aren't you playing?" And he goes, "I got to take care of the kids." And she goes, "No, you don't. I can take care of our kids. You go play." And, he told her, and she told me this about 2 weeks ago, he told her that he wouldn't have been in the Hall of Fame without her. And you know what? I honestly believe that. I don't think that his numbers were enough. And I just, Ryno became fun because of Margaret. His personality came out. He became funny. I got to share. You guys know 90% of my stories, but I think there's one here that you don't know. Ryno comes to spring training this year, and it was back in February. And I just hung up with Mark Grace 10 minutes ago. Gracie called trying to figure out what to do and who to talk to. And I said, I ain't talking to anybody but Marco and Tom. I'm not, I'll do a marquee thing later today, I guess. I said, in spring training, Gracie said he looked great. We were laughing. We were having a ball. And, guys, the first day he gets there, he comes in right in the middle of Craig Council's big meeting. All the coaches are there. And he comes in halfway through it. Craig introduced him. He got a standing ovation by Plod. And then Ryno, the new Ryno that Margaret brought out, he says, "Hey, guys, the only reason I'm here is to save you guys." And they all kind of chuckle a little bit. And he goes, I know that every one of you at one point, Sut has cornered you. And he started wearing you out talking about how great he used to be. And the coach laughed. And Ryno goes, I'm telling you, if he gets you again, all you got to do, and I don't know where he says, just say Barracuda, and I'll come bail you out. I'll take him off of you. I'll get him
Safe
off your
word.
hands. You'll be out there. And guys, I'm telling you, and I'm not kidding. He goes, and if he's really wearing you out, just say, I don't know if I can say this now. Just say effing Barracuda, and he goes, I'll come running. I'll come running to get. Well, the whole room is roaring. I mean, it's like, you know how I am. I'm the class clown and having fun with picking on everybody. So anyway, Council goes, Sut, you got anything? And Tommy, as you know from being in the dugout and the clubhouse a lot, I mean, sometimes you just got to wear it. You just gotta let it go. So I don't say anything. So the next day, at the end of the meeting, Craig goes, Ryno, you got any more? That was great yesterday. And Craig laughed harder than anybody. And Ryno goes, no, I'm still trying to put out fires, Sut's still at it. And anyway, and I raised my hand and I said, well, I got something. And Craig goes, what do you got? And I go, Craig, yesterday I heard Ryno say to you, he started the sentence with, back when he used to manage. And Ryno throws his hands up and goes, I was terrible. I like that. I go, hold on. I go, Craig, I've looked it up. The only percentage that was lower than Ryne Sandberg's winning percentage as a manager, Craig, it was your slugging percentage as a player.
Oh. Hit the flamethrower
and I told
out.
the coaches, I go, hey, Craig can get rid of you. I can get rid of you, too, if you don't start laughing right now.
That's outstanding.
That's great.
Anyway, that was the new Ryno. That was a Ryno that really has been around since 1996 when he put that 95 when he put that ring on Margaret's finger.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. We're talking to Rick Sutcliffe, one of the great Cubs of my lifetime, of all time. Won the Cy Young when he was acquired that 1984, and is the consummate professional winner. And so what I wanted to ask you was, like Waddle and I have busted balls about the Sandberg game through the years. When did you know, if you didn't, and maybe you already did know when you came here, but you were a Dodger, you were an Indian, and games weren't on national TV often, and there wasn't Twitter, there wasn't the internet, so it wasn't like there was a box score, and then you could see what someone was. What did you know about Sandberg when you got there in '84? And then when did you realize that he was something special?
Wow. I think I realized it the very first start I had as a Cub. We had lost 4 straight games at home against Philly, and after the trade when I got over there, and I wasn't able to pitch any of them. And I remember the fans and everybody was like, "Here we go again," whatever. They started talking about 1969, which I at that time knew nothing about. But I get a start in Pittsburgh, and I beat him. I went in the 9th inning or whatever. Ryno went 2 for 3. I come back 5 days later, and my first start at Wrigley was the day after the Sandberg game. And I shut out the Cardinals. I beat them 5-0. Well, look up the box score. I mean, I'm remembering like it was yesterday. Ryno scored a run, and he drove in a run. Fast forward to the clincher in Pittsburgh. I beat the Pirates 4-1. 4-1. Ryno scored 2 runs. As I say that, the thing. I mean, remember the first night game at Wrigley, or what was supposed to be? In the very first inning, if you guys remember, the first hitter, I give up a home run.
Mm-hmm.
What happens in the bottom of the first? Ryno hits a 2-run homer and gives me a lead, and we held that lead until it got rained out in the bottom of the 4th inning. I just, I told him one time, I said, "Ryno, buddy, and this wasn't long ago, I said, I don't win the Cy Young without you." And being humble, he goes, "I don't win the MVP without you." And I'm like, I think that, 1984 not only changed Ryno's life and my life, but I think there's a lot of people that can relate to that, and just how Wrigley changed from what Lee Ilias said about it in 1983 to what we all saw and got to experience in 1984.
So, and like that goes with it too, is the friendship, the brotherhood that you talked about. Like, you guys didn't, what people who may not be as old as I am or lived here when I lived through and I was 12 and I never knew what a winning Cubs team looked like you guys not only set a new standard, but you guys achieved a lot of firsts. Like, the 84 playoff appearance was the first in 39 years since 1945. Never had lights before. The first night game that you guys achieved. On and on and on. All these different things that you guys – did you guys ever look at yourself as sort of trailblazers of this new era of Cubs baseball?
No. I don't think either one of us ever thought about that. Or I just, as you say that, Marco, I think about, he's gone. And mixed emotions on that, because I know what he's gone through. I know what happened. Margaret called me and told me that, he's ready to go. His body's shutting down. And at that point, I literally started praying that he would be out of pain, and that she would, be able to start the healing. There's just a lot of things that you get confused with everything going on. Ryno's gone. Yeah, he's gone. But you know what? You guys know this, and that's what you just said, Marco. His impact will live forever at Wrigley Field. I mean, you look at what's going on there now. You mentioned the lights. You mentioned the scoreboard. You mentioned everything around Wrigleyville. What about the Gallagher Square? What about Ryno's statue out there? And I think about Ryno being handed the baton in 1984. And before he left, he handed it to Mark Grace. And I know Sammy was around at that time too. And then Gracie handed it to Kerry Wood and Dempster and all the other guys. Then Woody handed it to Rizzo and KB and that great group of guys. Rizzo, before he left, handed it to Ian Happ, and now Nico. Those guys have been here, and they realize the importance of the fans. And Ryno talked about it many, many times, about how difficult it was to play every day and play all those day games. But once the game started and you looked at every seat at Wrigley being filled, I mean, it filled your body with, just energy. It's like, I'm not tired anymore. Maybe I'm not doing well or whatever, but I'm going to do well today. And, I think Ian Happ and Nico Horner right now, and believe me, I said it about this guy. I argued with people on Twitter over the winter, but the baton is, I think, being handed to Pete Crow Armstrong. He cares. He's passionate. I don't know if there is a ceiling for all the ability that he has. I got in an argument with people on Twitter, and I don't do it very X or whatever it's called. They said, how many home runs are he going to hit? And I said 15 to 20. and people were arguing. There's no way he don't have that kind of power. Whatever. Well, I honestly didn't know he'd do it by the All-Star break, but
right.
It's just the legacy that Ryno's going to leave, and I mean he said it more times than anybody that there's no fans better than the Cub fans.
And so he was a consummate pro, and I ask you, you being with him every day, was he a reluctant superstar, somebody that was uncomfortable with his fame and notoriety? One of the things I've appreciated most about him, speaking about his own career, was, that old adage, when you have some success, act like you've been there. And it seems like that was kind of rule number one for him. But was he reluctant to be the superstar player that he was?
Yeah, he really was early. I think even all the things that he did kind of surprised him, especially when he started hitting for power. Defense was always the number one thing to him. He knew that if you kept the other team from scoring, that you weren't going to lose. And obviously, that's the reason that he chose to have his statue of him playing defense. I just, he was just shy. And just, I mean, from the very beginning, I told Robin several times, I said, you know what, riding the park today, and I told you guys this before, but there's people out there that might not have heard. I said, I'm not saying a word to him till he starts talking to me. And literally, we get halfway there, and he ain't said nothing, and I'd have some country music on, or I'd see his foot start tapping, and I'd change the channel. I did everything I could to make him mad, make him say something, and he never would. I mean, he was just, pregame he was shy. Obviously, postgame, I mean, he was exhausted because he played every day. But I just, I think about the year he was the Ron Santo Man of the Year for that Diabetes Foundation that Ronnie had. And Ronnie asked him, he says, well, who's your best friend? We'd like to fly him in for the banquet. And he goes, well, my best friend Sut. And Ronnie Santo goes, well, why don't you call him and tell him we'll pay for his flight, well, all that. And Ryno goes, I can't call him. And Ronnie's like, what? No, I can't call him. I'm not. Ryno he never wanted to put anybody out. He wanted to do his job. He wanted to get the game over. He wanted to come home to his kids. And, his kids were just more important than anything. And that shyness eventually did come out. And he turned into a character, and he turned into, just a really fun guy to be around. But he wasn't like that, when I left right before the 92 season.